My name's Robert Maher. I'm a GP. I've been a GP in Australia for over 40 years. And today I'm here to speak as a GP about what I am concerned about, the health problems of Julian Assange. I think all of us believe that we should all have access to good health care, regardless of our political or personal views.
There's more than enough evidence to indicate that Julian Assange has been tortured psychologically and is suffering from physical and emotional distress that is being deliberately inflicted. We're in an emergency medical situation which needs immediate attention.
And the source of the psychological torture, as Professor Melzer has called it in Assange's case, is from at least a couple of things. He's been subjected to solitary confinement, social isolation with hardly any human contact. And this is a very damaging thing to do to any person. But he's also been denied what he needs to prepare his own defence. He's had limited access to his legal team, we understand, and has not been provided with the information.
And we understand his lawyers have only had 2 hours with him in the last month, which seems an extraordinary thing.
In non-medical terms, he's basically been subjected to what character assassination.
These abusive conditions and the health crisis they've caused constitute psychological torture, according to the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Nils Melzer, as well as medical professionals specializing in the field. Mr. Assange's health conditions that are publicly known are serious.
And we know that psychological torture can have very severe impacts. It's not a mild form of torture by any means. This is a medical emergency. Assange needs medical help, and he's not receiving it in Belmarsh high security prison, and he needs to be moved.
I was for a decade principal psychiatrist at the Medical Foundation for Victims of Torture in London. I've had involvement with US rapporteurs on torture in the past, previous ones.
He was denied even 1 hour a day of outdoor recreation and sunlight that prisoners are entitled to. This is a setup for a host of serious problems, including immune suppression, atypical infections, and accidental or covert exposure to drugs, poison, and other toxic substances.
He needs proper assessment from head to toe. He's probably got not just psychological problems, he's got physical problems, dental problems, bone problems, but I guess the main problem is the psychological torture that he's been suffering through solitary confinement and persecution for many years.
And particularly over the past 12 months or so, 2019, Professor Nils Melzer has stated again with an increasing sense of alarm his concern about Julian Assange's health, to the extent that Melzer stated that Assange could in fact die in prison.
What alarms me is that Nils Melzer used the term psychological torture. Now, that's pretty unusual in UN rapporteurs, I'll tell you.
The health crisis that Julian Assange is facing is a full-blown medical emergency, and it hasn't just occurred, it's been inflicted.
Doctors for Assange entirely agree with the statements and assessments of Professor Nils Melzer and his team. We demand that he receive the health care that he is entitled to, and that the psychological torture be stopped immediately.
But Mr. Assange's condition cannot be diagnosed or treated without medical technology like MRI scans and specialists available at a tertiary care academic hospital, not in the basement of the Belmarsh prison, or any prison for that matter.
And it would seem to me that he, on the evidence available on the face of it, that he needs assessment out of Belmarsh prison in some other place.
Prison medical services are there for emergencies. In Australia, all serious health cases get transferred to a teaching hospital. And that's simply what we're asking for with Mr Assange, that he gets transferred to a proper independent teaching hospital, not the basement clinic of the prison cells, but to a proper medical facility where he can be independently assessed.
An untreated victim of torture who is still being tortured is by definition not fit for trial.
It's a big crisis of medical ethics.
And now being held solely in a Belmarsh prison in relation to extradition and for no other reason, which seems to me at the human rights level pretty grotesque.
The torture of Julian Assange has created a health crisis for him, but for broader society, this is a democracy crisis. Torture is the trademark of authoritarianism and is inherently an assault on democracy.
As a sort of Western citizen, this man, Assange, has been a revealer of truths. So this I would say before I start is what a cutting-edge citizen should be.
The danger of going after Assange, civil libertarians say, is an attack on Americans' right to know about what the government does with taxpayer dollars in our name.
The law is supposed to be separate from politics, right? And here we have political law being implemented like a normal law. Now, that would seem to me a total abuse of process, and everyone's skipping over that.
So we want the Australian government to intervene and to ensure that Julian Assange at least receives the health care that is appropriate for his deteriorating situation and to which he has a right as a human being.
I join with Doctors for Assange and with the UN Rapporteur Nils Melzer in calling for an immediate transfer of Julian Assange to a tertiary care academic medical hospital. We urge other doctors to sign on to the physician's letter, and we urge all people who are concerned about the future of democracy and human rights to please contact your elected officials on all of these counts at all levels of government. Let's have justice for Julian and democracy for all of us.